Welcome back, viewers. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Patrick Tauya Matope, and on this channel, I do deliver content on social work and social care in general. So if you are looking for that information, this is the place to be. If you are new to the channel, please do subscribe, hit that notification bell so that when I post, you'll be the first person to know. If you are coming back to the channel, if you are subscribed already, thank you so much for tuning in. Do please watch until the end, and I'm hopeful that today you will benefit something out of this topic which I'm going to be delivering today. So before I jump in today's topic, remember I need to put a disclaimer, or I need to mention it, that I don't regard myself as a guru in social work, but I do deliver content out of my own experiences and out of my own self-directed learning, and also out of experiences shared with colleagues in the field. But I believe the content which I deliver on this channel will help somebody, possibly who has been engaging with social care, or possibly somebody who is considering to be a social worker, for example. So in today's topic, I'm going to be talking about the differences between fostering and adoption. So basically, I'm going to be unpacking what fostering is, and then I'll unpack what adoption is, so that you see the glaring difference between the two. However, I'm also going to tackle 10 major differences between fostering and adoption to help somebody better understand these two most important facets of practicing with children and families. So, without wasting much time, I need to emphasize that, both fostering and adoption are an integral part of making sure that children are safeguarded, and also making sure that children are provided with the best possible start, or with the best possible environment for them to grow and thrive. So it's important also to mention that both fostering and adoption, they do provide, or there are processes which are meant to provide a stable and loving home, loving homes to children, who cannot live with their birth parents for one reason or another. There are many reasons why children may end up being removed from their parents, and as you may imagine, when they are removed from their parents, where we are saying they have suffered, or they are likely to suffer significant risk, it means they need to be put in a place where they will be safe. So it also means they need to be put in a place where their needs, their immediate needs, as well as their long-term needs, will be met in that environment. However, the reason why I've chosen to talk about this topic is obviously because I do respond to what the viewers would have asked me to deliver, but also I need to properly explain to somebody who may not know the difference between fostering and adoption. The main difference, obviously, is that fostering is kind of temporary, and whereas adoption is permanent. You're actually giving a child a permanent home in your household when you are at the adoptive parent, or when you are adopting a child. So let me first touch on fostering then. So, like I said earlier on, fostering it involves providing temporary care, or temporary. You meet the needs of a child on a temporary basis, especially those children who are unable to live with their biological parents due to various reasons I mentioned about abuse. It could be neglect, it could be parental illness, or it could be death. Maybe the child has been orphaned, or it could be the fact that the child has been abandoned, or it could be the fact that the child has been relinquished. When we talk of relinquished babies, we are talking of a situation where a parent gets pregnant and they are saying, no, I'm not able to take care of this child. I need somebody else to be taking care of this child. I'm not meant for this, or whatever reasons. Maybe because of mental health, or maybe because of shame, they can't go back to their family because they've had a child out of wedlock. Whatever, there could be many reasons why somebody would relinquish their child. So what I'm trying to say is, fostering, it involves providing temporary care for children who are unable to live with their birth parents, or with their biological parents, due to various reasons which could be there. Right. Then when we talk of fostering, obviously we will talk of foster care, and we'll also talk of a foster carer. So I need to explain who a foster carer is. A foster carer or somebody known as foster parent, it depends with which local authority you work for or which jurisdiction you are practicing. A foster parent or a foster carer is somebody who has opened their home to be caring for a child who is not theirs. Primarily, possibly that they are not even linked to, whether by relations or by birth or whatever. And usually they open their homes and hearts to these children to make sure that their immediate needs and long-term care needs are actually met. So foster carers are an integral part of social work or the work that we do, because they offer support, they offer stability, they offer a nurturing environment to these children who may not necessarily have had the same chance if they had remained with their birth parents, or if they had remained with their biological parents, or if they had remained possibly some to an extent with their adoptive parents. Because remember, even adoptive parents may end up having children removed from them as well, depending whether there are any safeguarding concerns which may be there. Because it doesn't necessarily mean that because you've adopted a child, and if that child suffers abuse, they are left with you because you've adopted them. Such a child can actually still be removed from your care if it is deemed that they are suffering, or they will continue to suffer significant harm. So it doesn't necessarily mean that because you've adopted a child, if a child is deemed to be suffering significant harm, they are left with you because you've adopted them. It doesn't necessarily mean that. The duty of care is on each and every child, whether they are British or they are not British. We have got a duty of care to make sure that children are safeguarded, regardless of uh, country of origin, and regardless of whatever it is that they are going through. Right. So let me go on to touch a little bit about types of fostering. So there is what we call emergency fostering, as you may, find out from the name. It basically means a foster carer is providing immediate care to a child or to children who have been removed from their, birth parents, or have been removed from their homes due to a crisis situation. For example, if it's a situation where maybe police have responded to a domestic abuse, or have responded to a situation where it is deemed that children have suffered significant harm, and they will continue to suffer if they are left in that environment. If the police have made a decision to police protect those children, they do refer them to social care. And when they are referred to social care in such situations, if there is no one else within that friend, within that family, or within those or friends who are linked to that part, to those parents, if there's no one else within the immediate circle to take care of those children, they might end up in an emergency fostering placement. So that's, type of fostering number one. Type of fostering number two is what we call short-term fostering. In short-term fostering, this is a situation where foster carers do offer care to children, I would say maybe for a few weeks or a few months, whilst social workers were making assessment of the children's situation. So it would some call it temporary or holding fostering placement, where children are placed because there is ongoing assessments which are being done. So sometimes a short-term fostering is used in situations where children have been removed, but we want them to remain in a situation where they're able to access local amenities, schools, and blah blah blah, to make sure that their life is not that much disrupted, whilst maybe court proceedings are still ongoing or assessments are still ongoing. So those are type of short-term fostering placements. And then there is what we call long-term fostering or merged fostering placements. These provide care for an extended period of sometimes until the child reaches adulthood. Say, for example, the child has been in a short-term fostering placement, and court proceedings have concluded, and a full care order has been issued, which means now this child needs to remain in the care of the local authority for the foreseeable future until they reach the age of 18. It may mean that we need to work towards making sure that that placement is now a long-term placement, in the sense that it gets merged. They go to panel, and the case is presented, and they are matched to that particular child to make sure that that child remains in that placement to ensure stability in nurturing environment and everything that the child will need. So that's another type of fostering. So foster carers, they do attend quite lots of training. They have access to support just like any other parent who will have access to support, say in terms of parenting. For example, if they are parenting a child who has gone through a traumatic life experiences, they attend also trainings like trauma-informed care. They attend many training packages that they do access, and they also do access regular support from what we call a supervising social worker, and they also get support from the social worker allocated to the child. Because remember, when we are talking of fostering, there is a supervising social worker who is the social worker allocated to the foster carers to support them and make sure that they are well supervised and everything is going according to plan. There is also a social worker allocated to the children who are placed with them to make sure that the needs of the children are actually being met. And there are meetings which they also need to be attending to make sure that that they are doing their job well as foster carers, and also the children's needs are also being met in a holistic manner. And there are many other professionals who will be involved as well. For example, the independent reviewing officer who will be involved to make sure that the plan for the child is actually being swiftly progressed and everything is kept in check and all that. So remember, the primary goal of fostering is to make sure that the child's immediate needs and possibly long-term needs are being met, whilst possibly the plan in the background is to make sure that at some point the child is reunited with their family wherever possible, or where it is safe to do so, especially where the parents would have addressed the concerns, or especially where the parents would have worked with the local authority to address those concerns. The plan will always be to reunite that child with their birth family. Remember, there are many things that foster carers will be required to be doing. They will be raising this child as if it's their own, making sure they access education, they access, the GP services, they access anything else that you would, expect of a child. And there will be meetings that will be set to make sure that the needs of the child are being met and they are appropriately supported financially and everything else that is required, really. However, if the option for long-term placement is not feasible for that particular child, and also depending with the age of the child, if a child is quite young and it is deemed that it's not in their best interest to be in a long-term placement, but a permanent home is required for that child, that's when adoption is only considered. Adoption is only considered in those kind of situations for that particular child who will be in foster placement. However, so let me move on now to talk about adoption, so that you have an understanding of what adoption is. So it's a legal process. I think the difference also would be, if you look at it in terms of fostering, the local authority would have possibly gone to court, to seek an interim care order first, and then to seek a full care order to place that child in foster care. So it's not like the foster carer goes to court to apply to foster a child, but usually the local authority takes the lead and then works with the foster carer to make sure that the child is taken care of. Because remember, the order is issued to the local authority, and then the local authority works with foster carers to make sure that the children are well taken care of. However, with the adoption process, the difference would be the adoption process is a legal process that the adoptive parents have to go through. I'll talk about who the adoptive parents is. Basically, the adoptive parent is the one who would say, I would want to adopt this child to be able to offer them a permanent home and for them to be my child. So adoption process, it's a legal process that permanently, I'm repeating the word, permanently transfers parental rights from the birth parents or legal guardians of that particular child, if they were under what we would call an SGO, or under a step parent who may have applied for parental rights for whatever it is. So it permanently transfers those parental rights from birth parents or biological parents or legal guardians to the adoptive parents. Then the adoptive parents will be the parent for that child from the day the order is issued going forward. So that's basically the adoption, the adoption process. Right. So adoptive parents, I would say these are individuals or couples who choose to give a permanent home to a child or a children who will be in need of permanent or long-term, care, who have long-term care needs. So they would actually say, I would need to adopt a child, and this child will be mine. So that child will have all the legal rights, just like their own biological children, so to speak. Right. So there are also a few types of adoption which I'm going to be talking about here. The first one is domestic adoption. This is adoption where a child is adopted within the same country. So if you are living in Norfolk, you adopt a child in Essex. That's domestic adoption. In some jurisdictions they call it internal adoption. It just means you're adopting a child within the same country where you are living. And then there's what we call international adoption. This is where you are adopting a child from another country or from another jurisdiction. Maybe you have gone to Malawi. We all know the popular, case of Madonna, who adopted children from Malawi, where you adopt children from another country, or children have been adopted, say for example, from Poland or from whatever country that you can adopt from. That's an international adoption. There is another video which is on this channel where I touch a little bit on international adoption. Can I adopt a child from another country? So you can go and watch that. So that's what we call in international adoption. There is also what we call open adoption, where you adopt somebody that you know already, or you adopt a child that you know already. It could be somebody linked to you by blood, or it could be somebody linked to you as a relative. Or it could be, say, a step parent who is legally adopting their partner's child. That's what we call an open adoption, because you're adopting somebody that you know already. You're actually adopting somebody that is linked to you somewhere, somehow, maybe through marriage, or linked to you somehow through relations and stuff like that. So within adoption, there are obviously some assessments that needs to be done in terms of your capabilities, your financial standing, and the condition of your home. There's what we call a home study that needs to be done. It's a thorough assessment in terms of studying the home environment to ensure that it's quite suitable for a child to be coming into the same process. Also happens with fostering. There are also intensive assessments which are done to make sure that you are actually assessed to be a suitable foster carer, so to speak. So the main difference then, which I'll talk about obviously, is around permanency. Because remember, unlike fostering, adoption provides a permanent family for that particular child, or for those children who are being adopted, whereas fostering is a temporary arrangement for children to be taken care of. So it's easy for fostering placements to break down, for a child to move from one foster placement to the other, whereas with an adoption, it's a permanent arrangement. It's there, it's done, sealed. It's your child. You need to deal with your child. If the child gives you issues, you just deal with it, just like any other child in your household would have given you issues around their behaviors and so forth, and you seek support for them, or you seek support from the local authority, just like any other parent who is having who is a biological parent to a child. That's what you need to be doing. So the main difference would be around permanence, whereas adoption is permanent. Fostering is a temporary arrangement where you can take care of a child, make sure that their needs are being met, but then if a placement breaks down or something happens, you can give notice, and then that child is moved to another placement. Or if you feel that you can't really take it on, then the child is moved to another foster placement. Right. So like I said earlier on, adoption and fostering, they both play critical roles in ensuring that children are well taken care of, and some with adoption they are given a permanent home at the end of the day, really. So I'm moving on now to the 10 points which I'm gonna be talking about to better explain the differences between fostering and adoption. The first one is the fact that I would say legal parentage. In adoption process, you become the child's new permanent legal parent, whereas in fostering, it remains the legal responsibility of the local authority to be the corporate parent for that particular child, if it is through an interim care order or if it is through a full care order. It's mainly the full care order where the local authority would be the corporate parent. If it's an interim care order, it's a situation where parental responsibility is shared with the parents. However, if it is Section 20, according to the Children's Act, it means the parents retain the parental responsibility and they will remain the parents. The local authority is just being asked to take care of the child, mainly because maybe the parents are struggling to manage the behaviors and stuff like that. The parents do retain their parental responsibility. So the child can be in foster care under Section 20, but the parents retain parental responsibility. But once an interim care order is issued, it means then the local authority is sharing parental responsibility as a corporate parent with the biological parents or with the birth parents. Whereas if a full care order is then issued, then it means the local authority is the corporate parent for that particular child. However, birth parents, can also continue to have contact with the child. They will continue to be, birth parents. They will continue to be parents. They will continue to hold also, they will continue to actually be the parents, right? Right. The point number two, which also gives difference between adoption and fostering, is that adoption is permanent arrangement. Once adopted, the child becomes a legal member or a legal part of your family for life. That's for life. Whereas fostering is temporary. You only provide care until the child can return to their birth family or move to a permanent home, like I said earlier on, where long-term matching has been done. And then decision making, that's another point which is also different between the two. When it comes to adoption, the adoptive parents have full decision making authority for that particular child, including which school the child attends, which countries to go on holiday, all the decisions that you can think of about a child when you're an adoptive parent. You can make those decisions on your own without consulting anyone, and you can make those decisions. Whereas when you're a foster carer, there are some decisions that you will need to be consulting the social worker to make sure that everything is in check, because the responsibility remains with the local authority to make sure that like I said earlier on, the responsibility remains with the local authority and the child's birth parents to make sure that, for example, the school that the child attends, or for example, the sport, there are many things really, including sometimes even the haircut, or there are many things that needs to actually be taken into account. So in terms of decision making in fostering, you can make all decisions. Some decisions are made by the local authority. But however, as the parent who is living with the child, you can make decisions as to what's for dinner today. You can make decisions as to what the child wears for particular occasions and stuff like that. But major decisions, there are some decisions which needs to be made by the local authority, or in agreement with the birth parents. There is what we call delegated authority, which is given though for some situations, which actually stipulates what the foster carer can do and what the foster carer can't do, what they will need permission from the social worker, or what they will need permission from the team manager, and what they can't, and what they will need permission from the birth parent and what they can't. And then point number four, which also better explains the difference, is duration of care. Obviously, fostering can range from a few days, if it's going to be an emergent short-term placement, to several years. And it's not intended to be permanent unless if the child, if the child is going to be placed until they turn 18, or sometimes when they turn 18, they may want to stay put until they are 25, but at some point they will need to be leaving because it's not a permanent arrangement. Whereas adoption is a lifelong commitment. That's the most important thing to take note of as well. Right. I think the other glaring difference also that I can talk about is demand. There is a higher demand for foster carers, which is known. If you look at literature, that's the case. For instance, as of March 2023, last year, there were about 83,840 children in foster care in the UK, compared to around 2,110 children in need of adoption. So you can tell that there's a big gap, there's a big difference between the two. And then point number 6, which is also very important, is the financial aspect. Adoptive parents do not receive a regular allowance for caring for a child because it's your child. You need to go and claim child benefit just like any other parent. Do what you need to do. Use your own resources to make sure that you take care of that child. Whereas foster carers, they receive weekly allowances, what we call fostering allowances, to cover for the costs associated with caring for that particular child. So remember, there's a motivation there. Foster carers, they do get weekly fostering allowances to be taking care of this child, whereas an adoptive parent, you've actually told yourself, I need to go and adopt a child, and there is no allowances that you get financially. There is no, you may get support from the local authority if the child has got specific needs and all that. You can access those just like any other parent can access support from the local authority, but there is no adoption allowance. That's what I'm trying to say. So in terms of support, it's also different because fostering parents or foster carers do receive extensive support and ongoing training, which is going to be ongoing until that child turns 18 or until that child turns 25 if they choose to stay put, for example. Whereas support for adoptive parents is less frequent. Once the adoption order is made final, there is post-adoption support. Don't get me wrong there. There is post-adoption support. There is what we call post-adoption support, but that support is not as extensive or intensive as compared to fostering parents. And then the waiting time. The waiting time for a foster placement is typically shorter. If you are a foster parent approved, sometimes you might wait for a shorter period and then a child is placed with you. Whereas for an adoptive parent, sometimes the waiting period may be longer, especially if you are adopting, from abroad or you are making an international adoption, really. Yes, so in terms of adoption, the waiting time period can be very, very long. Point number 9, which is also important, is the application process. Both processes are quite intensive. I would want to say that the requirements for fostering assessment tend to focus on the ability to provide temporary care, because remember, it's a temporary arrangement. Whereas for adoption assessments, we are talking of a long-term permanent arrangement or a long-term permanent order that's going to be put in place. So it's geared towards readiness for a permanent addition to the family. That's the difference, right? And then point number 10, in terms of the difference also, is that in fostering, at some point the child may return to their birth parents if the birth parents have addressed the concerns, if they've worked with the local authority. So there is a need to maintain connection with them, which is really, really important to make sure that when the time comes for the child to be reunited with their parents, there has been contact going on and it becomes as smooth as possible. Whereas in adoption, the ties with the birth family are legally severed, unless if it is an open adoption where a decision can be made by the adoptive parents to maintain contact with the birth parents. That's the difference. So with adoptive, with the adoption process, the adoptive family becomes the child's family. You are the parents. You are the family for that particular child. You're gonna be making decisions, and everything else, falls on you to make sure that the child is safe, the child is fed, everything else is done, and everything. Or like I said earlier on, there is no allowances that you get, for adopting, whereas somebody who is fostering do get weekly fostering allowances. Right, so these are the fundamental differences between adoption and fostering, and I hope I've helped somebody out there with questions around adoption. If you are new to the channel, please do subscribe, hit that notification bell so that when I post, you'll be the first person to know. Thank you so much, and thank you so much to watch until the end.